Welcome back to another video with Project Ruby. This time I'll be trying to fix an exhaust leak between the cat and then the rest of the pipe for the exhaust. So I'm going to start by putting a couple drops of air tool oil into my air gun here. Pull the trigger then to get some of it to go down in there. Let's see, should be 13/16 I believe the lug nuts are. So I have the heat shield cage for the catalytic converter already removed. I have the upper one still on there to help protect from heat going up and lighting some oil on fire. There's quite a lot of oil leaks underneath this thing, so we're going to try to attempt to avoid catching that on fire. And worst case scenario, I do have a fire extinguisher at hand, at the ready. And hopefully you can tell with this, but these bolts and nuts are definitely returning to the big junkyard in the sky. So we're gonna see if we can even get them out. You can see my exhaust leak right here, that black stain, that's all just soot. And then this ancient, probably asbestos gasket right here, I probably should breathe that in and heat that up, that'd be good. So I'm gonna attempt to get this apart on both sides. And it should just be a standard gasket that I can just go get. So I can take it off if the gasket's still in relatively one piece. I can just size it up, otherwise I can just measure the pipe diameter and go from there. So ideally you want to heat up just the nut, because that's gonna like break it loose. You actually turn it, but since this is so rusted welded into one piece, I may have to heat up a bunch of this stuff, and I don't think that this torch is gonna cut it. So I may end up just giving up and taking it somewhere anyway. And I have a ratchet about yay long here. So my rule of thumb is that if you have to get anything longer than this, the bolt's just gonna break off anyway. So if you can't get it off with this, you should probably just quit. Another safety precaution I have at the ready is an air blow gun. If the fire is small enough, you can just go pss, pss, and blow it out real quick. And since this is a bolt and a nut style with just a hole, another method would be just to break it out on purpose, beat it out with a punch. Because that is one piece. I may resort to the barbarian method. It's pretty bad. This torch is not big enough for this. Thought I would give it a shot. I kind of figured that would happen, but I thought I'd try it. So I have that side done. I forgot to push record on the camera because I'm an idiot, but that's okay because I have one more side. So once again, we're back taking this cage off of this side. This is the hack way of doing it. I want you guys to know that I don't have a torch big enough that will heat this up fast enough to actually like get the bolts out properly. So I'm going to just like hope that this doesn't come out without breaking, like that one just did. And there should be two more floating around here. On the other side, the two facing downward came out. I don't know why that would make a difference, but it did. This one doesn't feel so good either. Nope. Okay. I don't feel super duper bad about this. You can always drill this stuff out and put new bolts in it. At some point, there's just no point in fighting this old rusty stuff. Just start over. See, this one's gonna come out. So now I should be able to get this cage off. Shit, there we go. These have like a little swing on them. They're a little strap, they swing out, and then they just come right down. So this heat shield is, so this bolt that's left is kind of attached to it. Maybe I can, there we go. Get that kind of back up out of the way. And then I'm gonna do the same thing I did to the other side and burst break them off on purpose. And when you're doing something like this, pushing on it really hard, especially when you know that you're gonna break it off, don't put your fingers down underneath of it like this towards the way you're going. It's just a good way to smash your fingers. So like push on it with an open palm. And sometimes when they're really strong like this, you can get fresh with the car and use your leg and push it down like this. There we go. I don't know if you can hear it breaking. there it was. This is going to be stuck in the socket. You just whack it on the ground a few times. It should come out. If it doesn't, you can wrap your hand around it like this, put a punch through it, and whack it back out. There we go, just like that. And then you can take the punch and put it back up in that hole that we just made with the broken bolt, and you want to punch that back out. Hope I have a good angle on it. There we go. So this side isn't leaking. You can see its gasket's still in place, but I'm going to replace it anyway. One, just to make sure that it doesn't start leaking and blow out, and then so I can actually get the pipe down off of that one because it's sandwiched up against itself. And I have another Thunderbird too, same year, and it had the same identical problem that this car did. So I'm guessing it's a common problem when they get older. Ow. Oh, knocked the camera loose off my head. There we go. So the pipe's dangling down. We can scrape the gasket off with the gasket scraper. So now I can take my punch, hit what's left of the bolt here, and punch it straight out, just like that. Now I'll wiggle this free. Oh, come on. And then just toss it to the side. But after we inspect how bad it is. So that honeycomb thing, that is what a catalytic converter is supposed to look like. I was curious if they were melted or not, but they look to be pretty good. There's definitely some clogged up bits in there. Those little areas right there shouldn't be there. I'll just put this right up in there for you. Hopefully you can even see anything. Each one of those squares that's filled up with dust, it should not be like that. So it probably means that the front of the cat's probably melted and ruined. I'll have to put new cats on this at some point in its life. New cat's probably more efficient than this trash anyway. Don't want to completely destroy the environment. So now this is just as easy as taking the gasket scraper and just moving your tarp so you don't have to sit in it later. And just get all this old stuff off. Exhaust gaskets do a pretty good job of sealing up the trash like this. So as long as you get most of it off, you should be fine. Like I said before, this gasket probably has asbestos in it, so you definitely don't want to breathe it. It's okay to touch, just not to breathe. Like this fibrous stuff, that's asbestos. We don't want to breathe that. So I put on a dust mask, like a construction grade deal, and I'm going to take this Roll-Lock disc and get all that gasket material off. Like I said, I'm not sure that there's asbestos in it, but I want to play it safe. And I do this out of laziness. Sometimes the gasket scraper just takes forever, and I'm too lazy to deal with it. And when it feels all smooth like this, you're in pretty good shape. It looks pretty bad, but a gasket will seal to this. I'm going to scrape off the big chunks too to try to save my Roll-Lock disc a little bit. Nah, I had to change my mind. I'm too lazy for that. So this looks like okay. I'll show you how to properly seal this up when you get a new gasket. So I'll do that side, and then I'm gonna go get a gasket. So first off, you wanna measure the diameter of the pipe here. So like this is a 2-inch diameter pipe. You wanna make sure that the new gasket you get, it's gonna be like a universal type deal. That's a 2 inches on the inside. It may stick out further than the flange. That's okay. As long as it seals up on this hole, you're fine. And before I go get new stuff, so I'm gonna take a small trip down memory lane because this car just stops right after the cats, and the T-Bird that I had in high school was the same way, except it was actually missing the rest of the exhaust. So we're gonna see what this sounds like. I remember it sounded like a dump truck, but man, I thought I was the coolest kid ever because I had a V8 classic car. Doesn't sound as cool as I remember it sounding. Before I went to the hardware store, I took some measurements. So this being the end of the bolt, you don't really want to measure that. You can even see that this doesn't have threads on the end of it, whereas this bolt does. Either way, you want to measure it up here. This is like the meat of the bolt, I guess you want to call it that. You can use a wrench to see how big it is. Yeah, this one's a 3/8. Fits over it pretty snugly and doesn't wiggle around too much. So you go to the store and buy actually went to the parts store, and I got a 3/8 by 16. The thread pitch doesn't matter in this situation because you're replacing the nut too. So as long as the nut matches it, no big deal. And then of course take a wrench, fits over this just the same. We shouldn't have any problem with our flange. Next, buying gaskets for old cars like this is hard to do by application sometimes because they don't have all the sizes. So I measured the inside of the tube, which was about 2 inches. This gasket's about 2 1/8. That should be okay. It should seal up here anyway. Center to center for the bolt holes on the flange was 4 inches, and that's what this one is. So this should work, but I'm going to open it very maturely so I can take it back if I need to. And then I have some muffler weld, and this stuff works really good on rusty parts like this. You put a light film on each side of the flange and then put the gasket between that and sandwich it all together, and you should not have any leaks. Another tip is going to be grab the size of wrench that you need first so you don't have to crawl under the car a bunch of times. I'm almost ready to put the gasket back on. The inside of this measures at 2 1/4. The other one measured at 2 inches, so there's a little bit of drop here. So I'm going to open this as maturely as I can. So if I need to take it back, I can. There we go. That should have no problem sealing that up. It's touching all the way around. It should be good. So now what I'm going to do, got this muffler weld. This stuff works really well, especially when you're just trying to make it seal up. I wouldn't consider this the right way to do it, especially if it's like a show car. But for just making it seal up, there's nothing wrong with this. If yours is like mine where it has kind of separating, you might want to stir it a little bit. So just take your finger in this. I recommend wearing a glove and just putting a nice thin smear all the way around the flange. And this stuff dries like concrete when it's done. It's real hard, and it will seal up any stupid leak that you've had a hard time sealing up. So I definitely have put on an excessive amount, but I got a pretty bad looking flange. So hopefully this gasket will sit here now. Kind of aids in that way too. It kind of works as glue, so it will hold it for you. Now I gotta work fast and do this to the other side so I can put both sides up at the same time. I have some gasket right here that's more or less welded to the flange. It's having a hard time getting it to scrape off. So this stuff is going to do a good job of filling that hole so it won't blow out again. So I'm going to put the bolts through this way for no other reason than that's the way they were from the factory. I'm just starting these to make sure they don't fall back out on me. So now that I have them started, I'm going to take them out one by one. They're still hand tight. Put a little bit of anti-seize on there. And then do that with all 4 of them. Okay, I'm getting these pretty tight. Make sure everything's sandwiched in there. I'm gonna go tighten up the other two, and then I'll come back in a couple hours after the stuff has had time to set up, and we'll see if it's quiet. So it's about 3 hours later, and this exhaust putty stuff still has some squish to it. So I shouldn't start this yet, but I think I'm gonna try it anyway. If you get impatient with this stuff, you can hit it with a heat gun. We'll take all the moisture right out of it. This has the potential to blow out, but if it does hold and it gets hot, it will, take the moisture out of it, and then it should be fine. So I guess that's a risk I'm willing to take. If it does blow out, I'll put some more on it and let it sit overnight. And as a side note, I would definitely consider this an okay fix. This is definitely like an at-home job. I wouldn't want to do this to a customer car. It's kind of I don't want to call it a hack job, but it's definitely not. A welder and an actual gasket in the grinder making it smooth is definitely the way to go. So this is just me not having the correct tools at my disposal at the moment and not having a lot of exhaust experience. This is just me trying to make it not leak until I can get a different exhaust for it. So we'll see if it holds. So it ran quiet as a mouse, which is good. And I didn't want to start it because I was being impatient for sure. But another reason, when you get a little bit of heat into these pipes, it also helps this cure just a little bit faster if it's still strong enough to hold. You could already tell from me just starting it for a few seconds that it's already harder than it was before. So I'm gonna go ahead and let that sit overnight, and it should be good. So this heat shield, I'm gonna try to put that back on later, but I'm gonna make sure this isn't gonna leak first. I'll make sure it sets up. These are kind of a pain to get on and off. And the original nuts have provisions to hold this on, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to clamp this back down in a different new way. So for now, this should be fine. So this is about 3 weeks later, driving around showing you that my exhaust leak fixed and I'm not a complete hack. Cruising around, open the door. Can't even hear it run. So slow. Alright, so aside from my broken headlight switch, that's the hissing that you can hear under the dash. It's quiet. It's nice. I'll floor it here when I straighten out, so you can hear that I'm not yanking your chain here. What was that, like 30 seconds?
Yeah.
To like 70? Okay. Should do a burnout somewhere.
You should. I mean, that's illegal. You shouldn't do things.
Okay. Whoops. That's the moral of the story. Buy yourself a 77 T-Bird. Bad gas mileage, sounds cool, but it does burnout, so it's fine. So I'm back at my place of residence. Got it idling here in park. If you like this video, feel free to give me a like and subscribe.